will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1.
Section 1. You will hear a telephone conversation between a caller and a representative of a company hiring marquees. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 7. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Good afternoon, magnificent marquees. How can I help you?
Oh, hello. I would like to hire a marquee. You see, it's for a special occasion. My eldest daughter is celebrating her 18th birthday and her coming of age. There was no question of her waiting until her 21st, although I'm sure we'll be having a big celebration then too.
So you're celebrating in style? Well, of course I'd be happy to help. First, could you give me some details about guest numbers?
The customer wants to hire a marquee for her oldest daughter's 18th birthday. So you write oldest daughter in the space provided. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 7.
Good afternoon, magnificent marquees. How can I help you?
Oh, hello. I would like to hire a marquee. You see, it's for a special occasion. My eldest daughter's celebrating her 18th birthday and her coming of age. There was no question of her waiting until her 21st, although I'm sure we'll be having a big celebration then too.
So you're celebrating in style? Well, of course I'd be happy to help. First, could you give me some details about guest numbers?
Right, yes. Well, I was anticipating just a small do, but my daughter seems to have other ideas.
Well, you can't blame her. It's a special day.
I guess. I told her to limit numbers to around 50 guests, but the guest list seems to be growing daily. She would like to invite double that number, but we decided to split the difference and settle on 80 rather than 100.
If you don't mind some of the guests standing, then our marquee sizes always allow standing space for almost double as many as those seated. For instance, one of our smaller marquees seats 30 guests but accommodates 50 standing.
That sounds interesting. How big is that marquee? As not only am I working to a budget, but also we're limited by our garden size.
Can you give me an idea of both your budget and the size we're looking at?
Yes, I'm thinking of spending between £400 and £600. I can stretch to another 100 or two, but that's the maximum limit. As for size, well, our garden is 15 metres by 30 metres.
OK, well, our 4.5 by 9 metre marquee would fit in nicely. The hire and installation comes to £450, but that allows you to have the marquee for 2 days.
The marquee size you mentioned sounds fine and will accommodate the guests that we're expecting. Yes, I think that's the size I'll go for.
So, now as to the cost of lighting and fittings.
Oh, will that be very expensive?
It depends on what you want, but the cost of carpeting the marquee will add on another £150. With regard to the lighting, prices vary quite a bit. If you opt for chandelier lighting, then it's another £90, but that's the most expensive option. Otherwise, the average pricing is around £55.
I think I'll go for the more economic lighting then.
Then there's the furniture, tables and chairs and so on. You decided on seating for 30 guests. Well, at £3 per chair, that will work out at £90 in total. You will then probably need 5 tables at least, and so with each table costing £4, that brings us to a total of £20 for the tables.
OK, so I'm still just within my budget. Great! I'll go ahead with the booking then.
Wonderful. So there's only one more important detail that I need. When would you like us to set up the marquee?
Well, my daughter's birthday's on June the 6th, so ideally a day beforehand. Then we could have it taken down the day after her birthday.
Yes, no problem.
Great. Well, I'll go ahead with the order then.
Wonderful.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 8 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 8 to 10.
OK, so that I can process your order, I need to take down some details. May I start by taking down your name and postcode?
Yes, it's Jenny Lakewell, and the postcode's CV6TL3.
Is that Jenny with a double N?
Yes, that's correct.
And is that Jenny with a Y or an IE at the end?
Yes, it confuses everyone. I use the first spelling.
And I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the postcode. Was that CB6?
No, it's with a V, not a B. So it's CV6.
Right you are. Can I have a contact number also, please?
My mobile number is 07900 456. Oh, hold on a minute. I forgot I've got a different number now. So it's 079, then 44, not 00, followed by 325883.
Great, that's everything for the moment. We'll be sending you details and an invoice through the post in the next few days.
OK, and thank you for your help. Goodbye.
That's the end of section 1. You have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to Section 2. Section 2. You will hear a man being interviewed on local radio about a plan to improve a suburb called Red Hill. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 13.
Good morning and welcome again to Your City Today. With me today is Graham Campbell, a councillor from the City Council. He'll be telling us about the plan to improve the fast-growing suburb of Red Hill. Good morning, Graham, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Carol.
Now, Graham, I understand that there has been a lot of community consultation for the new plan.
Yes, we've tried to address some of the concerns that local groups told us about. People we've heard from are mainly worried about traffic in the area, and in particular the increasing speed of cars near schools. They feel that it's only a matter of time before there's an accident as a lot of children walk to the school. So we're trying to do something about that. Another area of concern is the overhead power lines. These are very old, and a lot of people we spoke to asked if something could be done about them. Well, I'm happy to report that the power company have agreed to move the power lines underground at a cost of $800,000. I think that will really improve the look of the area, as well as being safer.
That's good to know. But will that mean an increase in rates for the local businesses in that area?
Well, the power company have agreed to bear the cost of this themselves after a lot of discussion with the council. This is wonderful news, as the council now has some extra funds for us to put into other things like tree planting and artwork.
Before you hear the rest of the interview, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
Now, we've also put together a map which we sent out to all the residents in the area. And on the map we've marked the proposed changes. Firstly, we'll plant mature pine trees to provide shelter and shade just to the right of the supermarket in Days Road. In order to address the traffic problems, the pavements on the corner of Carberry and Thomas Street will be widened. This will help to reduce the speed of vehicles entering Thomas Street. We think it's very important to separate the local residential streets from the main road, so the roadway at the entrance to Thomas Street from Days Road will be painted red. This should mark it more clearly and act as a signal for traffic to slow down. One way of making sure that the pedestrians are safe is to increase signage at the intersections. A Keep Clear sign will be erected at the junction of Evelyn Street and Hill Street to enable traffic to exit at all times. Something we're planning to do to help control the flow of traffic in the area is to install traffic lights halfway down Hill Street where it crosses Days Road. Now, we haven't only thought about the cars and traffic, of course. There's also something for the children. We're going to get school children in the area to research a local story, the life of a local sports hero, perhaps. And an artist will incorporate that story into paintings on the wall of a building on the other side of Hill Street from the supermarket. And finally, we've agreed to build a new children's playground, which will be at the other end of Hill Street, close to the intersection with Carberry Street.
Wonderful. Now, what's the next stage?
Well, the final plan...
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear two students called Dan and Jeannie discussing their studies at university. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi Jeannie, how's it going?
Oh, hello Dan. Pretty well, thanks. Have you managed to get the money for the course yet?
Yes, that's all sorted out now, thanks. It took long enough though. It was practically a year ago that I applied to my local council for a grant, and it took them 6 months to turn me down.
That's really slow.
And I thought I was eligible for government funding, but it seems I was mistaken. So then I asked the boss of the company I used to work for if they would sponsor me, and much to my surprise, he said they'd make a contribution.
But what about college grants and scholarships? There must be some you could apply for.
Yes, there are, but they're all so small that I decided to leave them until I was desperate.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, I didn't need to apply. My parents had been saying that as I already had a job, I ought to support myself through college. But in the end, they took pity on me, so now I've just about got enough.
That's good.
So now I can put a bit of effort into meeting people. Haven't had time so far. Any suggestions?
What about joining some college clubs?
Oh, right. You joined several, didn't you?
Yes, I'm in the drama club. It's our first performance next week, so we're rehearsing frantically, and I've got behind with my work, but it's worth it. I'm hoping to be in the spring production too.
I've never liked acting. Are you doing anything else?
I enjoyed singing when I was at school, so I joined a group when I came to college. I don't think the conductor stretches us enough though, so I'll give up after the next concert. And I also joined the debating society. It's fun, but with all the rehearsing I'm doing, something has to go, and I'm afraid that's the one.
Do you do any sports?
Yes, I'm in one of the hockey teams. I'm not very good, but I'd really miss it if I stopped. I decided to try tennis when I came to college, and I'm finding it pretty tough going. I'm simply not fit enough.
Nor me. I think I'll give that a miss.
I'm hoping it'll help me to build up my stamina, but it'll probably be a long haul.
Good luck.
Thanks.
How are you finding the course?
I wish we had more seminars.
What? I'd have thought we had more than enough already. All those people saying clever things that I could never think of. It's quite interesting, but I wonder if I'm clever enough to be doing this course.
I find it helpful to listen to the other people. I like the way we're exploring the subject and working towards getting insight into it.
How do you get on with your tutor? I don't think I'm on the same wavelength as mine, so I feel I'm not getting anything out of the tutorials. It would be more productive to read a book instead.
Oh, mine's very demanding. She gives me lots of feedback and advice, so I've got much better at writing essays. And she's helping me plan my revision for the end-of-year exams.
Do tell me, I always struggle with revision.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Well, the first thing is to find out exactly what's required in the exams.
Would it help to get hold of some past papers?
Yes, they'll help to make it clear.
Right, I'll do that. Then what?
Then you can sort out your revision priorities based on what's most likely to come up. I put these on a card and read them through regularly. But that isn't enough in itself. You also need a timetable to see how you can fit everything in the time available. Then keep it in front of you while you're studying.
I've done that before, but it hasn't helped me.
Maybe you need to do something different every day. So if you break down your revision into small tasks and allocate them to specific days, there's more incentive to tackle them. With big topics, you're more likely to put off starting.
Good idea.
And as I revise each topic, I write a single paragraph about it. Then later I can read it through quickly, and it helps fix things in my mind.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I also write answers to questions for the exam practice. It's hard to make myself do it, though.
Well, I'll try. Thanks a lot, Jeannie. That's a great help.
No problem.
See you around.
Bye.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 4.
You are going to hear a lecture on fishing. First, look at questions 31 to 36.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen, and in case you've forgotten, my name is Dr. North from the Marine Habitat Research Unit at the university, and I'm going to continue from the lecture that I gave a fortnight ago on humankind's relationship with the sea from a historical point of view, and also on attitudes to different types of fishing. In today's talk, I would like to focus on the current problems in the fishing industry in Europe, and in particular, the present scarcity of marine fish. As with the last lecture, I've placed a book list, a few relevant articles, and a copy of this lecture on the department website. A statistic to begin with. Since the 1970s, stocks of the most heavily fished species have fallen, on average, by 90%. And why has this happened? Well, there's a chain of events which begins with the demographic changes that have taken place in the world over the last century. During this time, the world population has grown at a phenomenal rate, with efficient and heavy fishing, which is technology-driven, meeting the increasing demands for food. As a consequence, many fishing stocks in the European waters, from the Atlantic to the North Sea and the Mediterranean, are now on the verge of collapse. But the problem is not restricted to European waters. It's a situation that's all too clear all around the world. Fish stocks in the Pacific Ocean, for example, are now on the verge of collapse due to a combination of overfishing and natural changes in ocean ecology. And there's another reason behind the increased demand for fish, and that is the changes in the eating patterns of different countries. Certain countries have a long tradition of fishing, for example, the southern European countries, but eating patterns have changed in countries like the United Kingdom, where fish was once considered as food for the poor rather than the rich. People have been turning to fish as a cheap and healthy alternative to meat, driving up demand and depleting stocks. Food scares like BSE and foot and mouth disease have also driven people away from eating meat, which again is invariably replaced by fish.
Before the speaker continues, look at questions 37 to 40.
Another important reason is that a sizable proportion of the catch from modern trawlers or fishing boats is thrown away. Nets quite often land fish that are not wanted and which are thrown back into the sea dead. Discarded nets and other traps are responsible for the deaths of many fish. Our seas, like the rest of our environment, are littered with rubbish which also destroys lots of fish. And fish are also being changed by the chemicals dumped into the oceans, as well as by overfishing, so the size of certain species is decreasing. More then have to be fished to produce a decent catch. And the solution? Well, there has to be more than one answer to the problem. Fish farms provide a partial solution, but the quality of the fish is usually inferior to those in the wild. Reducing the amount of fish that any one trawler or fishing boat is allowed to land is the most effective, but also the most unpopular measure. Countries in Europe like Spain rely heavily on fishing and are naturally against any step which restricts their catch. But if the depletion of fishing stocks continues, there will be no fish left to fish. Take the disappearance of cod from the Great Banks off Newfoundland, which was once the richest cod fishing area in the Atlantic. After a dramatic fall in the cod population for some unknown reason, a ban was imposed, which, it was hoped, would lead to a repopulation of the cod stocks. The cod did not return, and many fishermen were put out of work. This is a scenario which we do not want to be repeated on a large scale. Now, if you look at this table on the screen, you can see where I've marked.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.